Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is TJ Atomica, or Tyson Butler-Boschma, and I have been a game developer for over 13 years. For the same amount of time, I've also had this YouTube channel. It has specifically been somewhere where I can upload videos of the work that I've been doing, put it up online, etc. But I'm interested in potentially moving it somewhere further. If you've been here before, if you've seen my work, you probably know me for making Unreal Engine projects, specifically a Superman-style flight experience that I built a couple of years ago that went super big. But this video today is a little bit different. To start, this is the first time that I'm kind of putting myself on camera, I'm talking to you directly instead of just putting my work up and uploading it. And I'm doing that from the perspective of I'm interested in evolving this channel a little bit. As I said, I've had it for many years, and it's always just sort of been a place for me to put my work. But I'm interested in expanding what I do for this channel beyond that space. Through many years in game development, I've done interviews, I've spoken to people, I've been on podcasts, etc. And the same feedback I always receive is people like listening to me. That might be a very small group of people, but it is something that I'm interested in at least exploring. Through my 13 years, I've worked on some really cool projects. I've worked on Fortnite, I've worked on SpongeBob SquarePants, the cinematic trailer for Multiverses, and a slew of other things that you can see on the screen now. And I've been sharing my art and my game dev work in general online for years. But now, I want to take this channel in a new direction, and I don't just want to show you what I've made, I kind of want to bring you along for the journey and show you the process a little bit, share some of my insights from 13 years in this industry, and hopefully inspire you and teach you some things along the way. If nothing else, if someone listens to this and they get inspired to get into games and potentially make games, then I would consider any work that I do here to be a success. Think of this sort of step that I'm experimenting with as a mix of like gaming and game development content, but with an added perspective of a game developer who's still very much deep in the trenches. And I want that to be something that's very clear and very, I guess, transparent and well explained here is with the way that I would like to evolve my channel into something that is a bit more me-facing or forward-facing to you, the audience. I don't want it to be another job. I have enough jobs. I'll talk about the different work I do. I work full-time as a game developer, and then I've got my own indie studio on the side as well that I'm trying to manage. And on everything else, I'm currently writing a book on Unreal Engine as well. It's a massive amount of work. So for me, I want YouTube to be kind of just a little bit of a creative outlet, but it doesn't need to be successful, I suppose. In the traditional metrics, I don't need to get tons of views. I don't need everyone to subscribe whenever they want, though if you want to, please do. It is purely just for me to experiment with some ideas that I have and then also kind of share my knowledge a little bit in a way that hopefully helps some people. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, then cool, let me know. And I'll kind of figure out how I want to go about it. I have a few ideas for what I'd like to do in the future. I definitely want to have a bit of a talk about my book, especially since that'll be coming out soon, and break down some of the things I'll be talking about in my book into some video-sized content that reveals sort of the overviews of each one of the chapters. So if you're a game developer or an Unreal Engine user, developer, whether that's games, film, whatever, yeah, a few of my future videos might have stuff that's actually useful to you. For my personal motivations, why am I doing this? Well, my goals with YouTube are pretty simple. First, I want to share more of what it's actually like to make games, both the challenges and the wins. I absolutely believe I was put on this planet to make video games, but that doesn't mean that it's like always easy. And I see YouTube as a great way, or streaming, whatever I end up doing. Again, I'm kind of just winging it a little bit, as a great way to kind of just share my thoughts, which will be cool. Second, I want to build a community of people who are just excited about games and interactive media as I am. I want to talk about games, but I also kind of want to play them as well. But play them in a sense that I'm hopefully going to bring some interesting insights, specifically from a game dev perspective. And then third, honestly, I just want to have fun making cool videos. Over the past year, I've started to really get passionate about a little bit of video editing and stuff like that. It's good fun. My professional job is as a cinematic artist. So these are all things that I'm like really passionate about. And I think doing these videos on YouTube, even if they're just maybe like one a week, they're going to be just a cool way to stay creatively loose. Basically stretch the brain, for lack of a better term. Being creative on demand every day for 10 plus hours a day can be incredibly difficult when it has to be on demand. But often I'm just get inspired, and I don't always have the outlet for that inspiration, which is what I'm hoping this YouTube channel can be. However, sometimes there is opportunity for those creative endeavors, for those moments for me to be just truly creative. And that is what I would like to talk about specifically today, and is obviously the title of my video as well. So recently, I took part in Punisher's Rampage Rally Art Challenge. If you haven't seen one of these challenges before, they're basically massive online competitions with thousands of 3D artists that all get the same starting template, and we each create our own unique take on that theme while sticking to a particular set of rules that Clint, Punisher, has set out for us. And it's really, really awesome. It's a great way for you to sort of, just experiment with ideas, advance your existing knowledge base and stuff like that, and also just to do something fun in a short amount of time. In game development, I'm often working on projects that can last for several years. So to have something that begins and then ends within the space of a month can be like really creatively fulfilling. So that's the kind of thing that I would like to talk about. As part of these challenges, one of the things that you want to be able to do, or ideally one of the things that you strive for, is to get into the top 100 montage. So for this challenge, the Rampage Rally, roughly 2,700 artists entered globally. That's a massive amount of people. And I was really stoked that on my fourth challenge, this is the fourth time that I've done this, that I found out that I made it into the top 100. To give you an idea, these are the first three that I did. So this was a Halo one that I made for Eternal Ascents, which was the first challenge I entered. The next one was Kinetic Rush, where I did sort of like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle thing. The third one was it Chasm's Call, I believe, and I did sort of like a ritualistic sacrifice kind of scene. I actually got an honorable mention for that, and I was like, oh, cool, I must have been like pretty close to getting into the top 100 for that one, which was like really exciting. And then to get into the top 100 for this one is like, it's really cool, and it's like really validating and stuff like that, and it's just awesome, and it's something I wanted to chat about and talk about, break down a little bit of what my process would be. As I discussed, I'm an incredibly busy person. I work a lot, so I want to be transparent and talk about the kind of techniques that I used in order to get this project done, because I only really committed like 30 of my spare hours to it, which for anyone who is familiar with game dev or art creation or anything like that in a digital context is really not much time. It was about understanding where I could bend the rules in a way that I needed in order to achieve something that still was originally me, but I was able to use the incredible work of other talented artists as well where necessary through the combination of like asset purchased packs, etc. So yeah, really, really exciting. This is what I made. Yeah, so really, really happy with that. And, you know, for me, these challenges were all about pushing my storytelling skills a little bit. You know, it's not just about making something cool as much as that is really exciting to do. It was about crafting a little story in just a few seconds of animation, right? And that's one of the things that Punisher talks about is he mentions that, you know, the key things that they're talking about or that they look at when they're judging the top 100 is the storytelling moment, the lighting, the composition, and the quality of animation, like making sure that there's nothing like clearly janky or anything like that. So to get into the top 100, again, like I feel really, really privileged. And I want to go through with you the process that I went through for some of that. So yeah, as you can imagine, I used Unreal Engine 5 as my main tool, leveraging Nanite and Lumen for a bunch of the heavy lifting, and then layering in details to give it personality. The cool part of these challenges is they force me to experiment. When you're under a deadline and you're looking, you know, at what thousands of other people are doing, and you're asking yourself, oh, you know, how can I stand out, etc. For me, it was about balancing spectacle with clarity, but also understanding that I had a very finite amount of time in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve for this challenge. For me, I understood, and this I guess comes from my professional experience, that I understood that I wanted viewers to instantly get what's happening, but still feel like there's depth in the rewatch, right? So hidden details, etc. But yeah, 5 seconds isn't a lot of time to draw people in. So often we run into the situation where less is more. You know, you don't want to necessarily clutter the scene. As long as you hit those kind of key elements, then you can achieve a lot with that. So that was one of the key mantras I took into when I started. All right, so here we are in my scene in Unreal. As you can see here, I've got the sequencer, etc. And a big part of what I've got here is, in hindsight, I wish I had have been able to record a bunch of the work I actually did as I was going through the process of actually making this scene. Unfortunately, even if I had hindsight, I wouldn't have really had the computer power necessary to do this work while also having a screen recorder on the side the whole time. I'm just not rocking the best computer there is. I'm using a 1080. I know that's not the worst graphics card by any measure, but it is absolutely super limiting. As a lighting artist, I have access to way more things within my professional job, but here I can't use things like ray tracing, path tracing, etc. Because my GPU just does not allow it. I think that is what is kind of the most interesting thing about this scene, if I'm being entirely honest, is even now, you can see up here in the top, it's not like a perfect frame rate, but it's more than like usable for my purposes. The goal here was to make something that looked cinematic while still being as performant as it could possibly be. And to be honest, that's a lot of what I talk about in my book as well, is taking like the best practices and principles from game development, which requires your work to be optimized, to be able to work in real time, but then also the best principles from like cinematic pre-rendered work, which is all about making something look as good as it possibly can. So with this breakdown, it's going to be more of a generalist overview of like what I did, and kind of explaining the path I went down and where my ideas came from, etc. And then hopefully that's good enough. And then in the future, I'll be able to do like further breakdowns from there. But hopefully at the very least, this will give you a good insight into actually what's happening in the scene as I slow everything down and kind of show it in that context as well. As I'm sure most of you know, but for those who don't, with the Punisher art challenges, you get given a template. And from that template, you have to basically match it in such a way that as the montage goes through, everything sort of matches. What's important in that regard is making sure that the weight, the camera doesn't change much, the composition remains consistent. So Punisher admitted that there is situations where people can kind of bend the rules a little bit to achieve something that they want to achieve. But you have to be really careful. Sometimes you can get lost in the source. For me, this time, what I was interested in was how can I actually go about bending those rules a little bit while still remaining within the requirements of what the template actually is dictating. The way I did that, and I'll kind of show that quickly just here as well before I go into a bit of a deeper breakdown, is one of the things, and a few of the comments in the 100 reveals stream kind of noticed this as well, is the way that the camera is actually moving, right? So, you know, realistically, if I'm coming from this low point here and then I follow the template exactly, then when I land within the environment again, I should be down here a little bit, but I'm not. And the way I've done that is I've actually grabbed the scene, and I'm doing a little bit of like a trick of the eye. So as you can see, when I overlap these two scenes, you can see the way that I'm actually sort of rotating the entirety of the scene to like move around the camera in a way that technically doesn't follow the template, but when you look at it overlapped, so my version of the art along with the template that's provided, you actually see that my ramp, my landing, my camera, everything is still perfectly in sync. The way that I've achieved that is I'm actually rotating the entire scene within Unreal itself, and I'm actually like pivoting that stuff as it moves around. So while I'm not technically moving the camera, if I move to the top here, so let's get to the end of this scene. When I click here, right? So this was one of the things where I was like messing around with the rotation. You can see that as I do this, do you see how the entire scene is like rotating around within that space? So I haven't actually changed the camera relative to where the actual character is or where my vehicle is. And in the same way, I've done that same thing with the roll as well. So you can see how I'm actually moving within that space. And this is one of those things that I approached where I was like, I think I'd be able to like bend the rules without technically breaking them. When you look at the template overlapped with my final render, the vehicle or my character on the hoverboard follows the path of the original template perfectly. And I technically haven't changed the camera at all. I've just adjusted the world around that space. And as a result, I've been able to avoid some of the limitations of the animation work that I've got in here. The judges even mentioned it during the live stream, how like the cool thing about the magnetized board is when it like smashes back to the feet of my character here, it can like hide a lot of the animation problems that would actually be visible otherwise. And that's the exact same thing that I was trying to achieve with kind of like moving the world around as well. Another thing Clint said, and I really like that he appreciated this, is in this particular scene here, the kind of the sense of the snowboard movement, so that like camera shake as you like dig in hard. I can tell that he's a snowboarder, basically because of the way that he knew that that's how it felt to actually dig into the snow when you're trying to come to a stop. And that was the key inspiration for me as well, because I really enjoy snowboarding. So being able to do that and him being able to see that that was kind of the inspiration for the intensity of that break, it needed to be amplified through movement of the camera. But again, within the context of the rules, I couldn't actually move the camera, so I had to be really careful about how I did that. So that's one of the key things, which I think is really cool, is the way that I've like sort of abused the actual positioning of the scene world relative to the camera, as opposed to actually changing the camera itself. And it appears to have been okay. So that's a great example of if you need to, if you want to do one of these challenges in the future and you're kind of curious, well, how can I bend the rules without actually breaking them? One example is, as long as you don't change the camera itself, but you maneuver the world throughout that space, realistically, as long as everything overlaps, looks the same, then you should be sweet. As I had mentioned just before in my video, the other thing that is really important when I was putting all of this together is I had very, very limited time. And I know a lot of artists might disagree with me here, and that's okay. That's fine to have that opinion. But I'm personally a big fan of using store-bought assets when you need to, especially for something that is meant to be as simple as an art challenge. And Clint even says that this is okay to do as well. And I think because, in a sense, like, you know, as long as you're not saying that it's like, oh, it's your original assets that you've built and stuff like that, you're still creating something original with another person's work, yeah? And ultimately, that's fine. The intention here was to make sure that you follow the template and to create something interesting. And these things exist on the asset store for that reason. And honestly, this kind of pressure cooker environment, I think, is what makes me better as an artist. While yes, I used a bunch of like pre-existing assets as a base, and I'm super grateful to be able to access that kind of stuff. That's why that stuff exists on the marketplace to begin with, right? It's so that you can use that and improve and get better in areas where you feel like you need to or where you want to. I do set dressing and environment work in my professional job all the time. I don't see a need to then spend more time doing that when I can focus on the things that I haven't necessarily done before, like effects and things like that. So, every time I do one of these, I come out with like a new workflow or a new trick or a fresh idea or something like that that I can take back to my professional work. And in that way, it's very creatively fulfilling. And getting into the top 100 is just a bonus on top. Now, when I start almost every challenge that I've got, it usually starts from the perspective of, I have a limited time, so I'm going to have to kit bash this stuff. And the simplest way for me to do that is to just go into my Fab Marketplace and kind of have a look at what I have available. And what I had available was a few things. Firstly, something I've had for a very long time is Ultra Dynamic Sky, which I imagine a lot of you have heard about before. The other one was Sci-Fi Port Environment, which was made by Vasily Poryagin. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's a super dope scene, and honestly, like, it's really, really cool. And I've been looking for an excuse to do like an art piece using all of these assets and stuff like that, which was like really exciting. One of the things, if anyone's been in this scene before, that you'll probably notice, and this is where a lot of my work into this scene came in, is I was happy with the general layout of the existing template, but it was just super unperformant for my needs. And even now I'm getting like issues with the one pass projection for the virtual shadow maps and stuff like that. So I had to really strategically like delete and remove a bunch of things in order for it to be performant to my needs. Obviously completely removed the atmosphere and the sky and everything like that and replaced it with ultra dynamic sky as well. But then also using things like Brushify. So Brushify has a cool amount of like these sort of background elements and stuff like that. And when I zoom out, I think it's cool to show these kind of things off because like looking at this in this context, it's like really not impressive. You know what I mean? Like look at it. It's really simple, straightforward. I've kind of destroyed the scene that it was anyway to kind of achieve what I wanted to do. But it says a lot about the importance of only focusing on what matters, which is what the camera actually sees, right? So from this perspective, this looks like a highly, complex, well put together scene. But realistically, from like here to like here is where the complexity ends. And I've deliberately put things in the way so that you can't see holes in the map. This might seem like, geometry and stuff, but what it actually is actually just one of these like dreadnought ships that I happen to have like in my packs. The same dreadnought that's up there, right? But I've hidden it in such a way that it actually just sits into the environment and looks like it's part of the environment. So like game dev and like a lot of cinematic work, it's all just smoke and mirrors, which is like really, really cool. Again, if I like get out of this camera view, yeah, you can see, right? It's just like not the same. So yeah, that was one of the things that I focused on, which was really cool. But I also thought it was important to imply that, yeah, like I have used pre-built assets. It seemed like the best thing to do with the limited time I had. And when I saw the sci-fi port environment like years ago now, I thought that'd be like a really cool asset to use, asset pack to use to try out and stuff. So I'm really glad I've had an opportunity to give it a try now and hopefully do justice to how cool it is. I really like the cinematic trailer that comes with it, but I wanted to do something that was a bit more flashy from a lighting perspective, which that's kind of the thing that I really like focus on in my career. So using ultra dynamic sky and a combination of just my understanding of lighting, I was able to achieve something that I thought looked really, really interesting. Now, again, I'm sure there are people out there that are like, oh, you've just used ultra dynamic sky. It's like, it's not you or anything like that. And my argument would be, well, yeah, I mean, I can also go to lights and pull in a point light, and that's not me. That's like the epic engineers that have created all of the logic that understands how to create this point light, right? I'm not a programmer, I'm an artist. And in the same way that the team behind Ultra Dynamic Sky are obviously super, super talented, in the same way that engineers will create a race car, you still need someone to drive that car. And in that way, I feel like I'm the driver. So I took that approach, knew that I wanted to create something really beautiful. I had the limitations of my computer. So it was really important that I took the best parts of Ultra Dynamic Sky and really simplified it down. For example, I knew it was a short scene, so I didn't want to deal with things like their volumetric dynamic clouds. I just wanted it to be 2D ones, which looked like really nice in the background. And then in the post-process, I just bloomed the hell out of this scene to hide a lot of these background elements that aren't great, and then just raise the fog a bunch as well. And then if I switch to this level view mode optimization, light complexity. So you can see this is a pretty unoptimized scene for the most part in terms of like the overlapping lights that you can see. But you can also see that it only goes to like a really short distance as well. And realistically, as much as it's expensive in this short moment, because it's only expensive for this very small area, it actually keeps things pretty nice and pretty optimized, for lack of a better term. The other thing I did as well, so in this scene, this is one of the things that didn't come with the scene and what I wanted to do to kind of improve the way that it looked, is if I fly through here, I wanted to add a bunch of these cool, like, blue lights. I wanted something that was going to directly contrast with the orange and pinks of the sunset that I wanted to achieve there. So I created my my blueprint and stuff. But in that blueprint, only these lights that you see on the bridge are actually casting shadows. And realistically, in hindsight, I probably didn't even need that, right? Everything's happening so quickly that you can't even really see the shadows that are going on here. If I switch to virtual shadow map, so my shadow mask, so you can kind of see where it's like trying to cast shadows and where it's important and stuff like that. But for the most part, these areas that are casting, like these lights that are casting shadow, even all those ones up the back that were, so again, if I go back to here, right, all these lights up here, even though there's a complexity in terms of their rendering and overlapping and stuff, they're not very expensive from a shadow perspective, and that was another optimization that I did in order to just sort of make the scene perform a bit better, to put it in layman terms, I suppose. So yeah, it was all about taking, you know, something that I knew was going to be like a really cool shot. Obviously, this is very complex here, having the ship go past and stuff like that. But yeah, taking a pre-existing scene and then pushing it further while also peeling it back to be more optimized for my needs. And again, it's a thing that I talk about a lot in my book as well, and hopefully will be something I talk about in future videos. The other thing as well, this is just like little set dressing I did, like putting signs around and stuff like that, and putting way more like scaffolding and stuff through the scene. A lot of this stuff comes kind of as it was, because it was already really cool, so I was happy with that. But yeah, like I said, doing things like the vehicles, those are just basic particles. The birds are basic particles. The background buildings are just from Brushify. I personally don't think they look particularly good up close. I mean, they're still super awesome assets, right? But like up close, they're not like particularly impressive, but they don't need to be. You zoom back out and then boom, you get all of these silhouettes and it just looks super awesome. So again, smoke and mirrors, focus on what's important. So for me, I knew the 4 things that Clint said was important for the judging process was the story, the lighting, the composition, and the animation. So I was confident with my lighting. My previous scenes I thought were pretty solid lighting-wise as well. And I was also pretty confident with my composition. I kind of figured the idea very quickly based on this scene was that I wanted this to be the thing that pulls your eye towards the screen, and then I wanted the light to be the key sort of element outside of the the character that makes it really pop. The other thing I did as well is if I scroll down here, you can see my character lighting rig, right? So this is a quick rig that I made that just follows basic principles of a character light rig. So you've got your key, your fill, and your rim light. If I hit G, so you can actually see what's going on there, you can see that I've basically added these extra lights. And if you look here, if I go back to G again, you can see how much difference having those extra lights do. It doesn't necessarily make realistic sense, but it helps the character pop off of the screen, right? And that's as simple as just having a key light that's really bright, a fill light that's really bright, and then a rim as well. And all I was really changing for that, as you can see, they're all white here. The main thing I was affecting was just the temperature. So I knew that I wanted this side to be cooler, I wanted this side to be brighter, and then that's all it is. And then literally just attach it to my main character in the world. And then Bob's your uncle, super easy. The other element of it was the board was super simple. That was just an asset that I had. I created, I don't know why that's not visible. Oh, because I've made it invisible, right? So if I turn on the mechs and the effects and stuff like that, right? So these decals here, these are just decals that I built in Photoshop really quickly, if I actually bring one up. Yeah, and then I just put like a circle around it. I just got like the paintbrush and just put a circle into the shot. And then that was enough to be like, yeah, cool. It like kind of looks like the foot and stuff. Again, it didn't need to look perfect. It just needed to look okay on the actual board itself. And then those decals are literally just being turned on and off through sequencer. Yeah, so you can see how they like blink on and stuff. And then when the board remagnetizes, it like reattaches and stuff like that. The rest of it, just some really cool effects. This ship, I knew... So I was talking about the importance of lighting and composition. The other thing that I really wanted to make sure was good, because I knew I was able to get like the animations pretty reasonable for the snowboarding, and then as long as I put like enough camera shake in there and stuff, and like I said with the kind of scene movement, I could kind of abuse the lack of animation quality in some regards to like really push it to the max. But yeah, it's a combination of posing, retargeted animations, and then just tweaking them myself within Unreal as well, which was cool. So just blending a bunch of stuff and a bunch of key poses together. The other bit I wanted, and the bit that's another key element, and kind of the fourth key element, is the story. And it's really hard to convey a story in a short amount of time. I liked the idea of like wanting to do the hoverboard snowboarding scene pretty soon, and I kind of stuck onto that, but I was like, what's the story other than they're just sort of like going over this cool pass, etc. And that's when I got the idea of Close Call, which is what if they just avoid a ship, and then as a result that causes the hoverboard to stall, and then just in time, and it's a really subtle detail, but you can kind of see the little blinking on the head, right? That's meant to, for me, I was kind of thinking that like a modem trying to reconnect, right? And then when it reconnects, the board reconnects and then slams back into her feet, and then she can fly off. It's a really simple story, but I think simplicity, again, in this regard, is probably what works best, right? It's like, cool, almost crash, pulling hard, and like you can see how the effects of the fire sort of like boost really hard. That causes the board to stall, and then from there, boom, have the board reconnect, so on and so forth. Now, with this, I obviously had her going for a while. I actually had the mannequin in the scene in a way different way. So if I make this visible, that what you see there, so you see how I've got the original mannequin animations first. They line up pretty well, but originally I had it doing like a full spin, which you can see like what's happening there. Which was cool for the board, but then when I brought in the actual character and ended up swapping stuff around, I actually thought it was kind of more interesting having her not spin around, and it actually resulted in a movement that kind of felt more natural. But I didn't want to lose the fact that the board was technically attached to this mannequin here, so I just hid the mannequin. So he's always in the scene technically, but just not visible. And then boom, go from there, and you get the landing and stuff. So yeah, there was a ton of work. Obviously, a ton of this is also VFX stuff. So like, I'm literally just keyframing and turning things on and off as you enter into this, like into particular moments, or using particular activation calls for like material variables and stuff like that, parameters. So to make it look a certain way. And yeah, it's kind of all there is to it. It's not overly complex. when I was doing the animation retargeting, so this is like actually retargeted to this character here, that took a little bit of work, but thankfully with UE 5.6, the animation retargeting stuff is like way stronger now. So it was a relatively simple task to do. So when I'd put that together and I'd put this whole scene together and it was optimized and it was working the way that I wanted, the last thing that I had to do was kind of render it. And that was the last sort of step I had to go through, where I took the original config that they had, but then I had to make it custom for my needs. So the first thing I wanted to do was get it as an EXR sequence so that I could render it out and do a very quick post-process pass through DaVinci Resolve. Everything else kind of remained the same. Spatial count set to 15. It's really valid feedback, and I want to consider it for the next one. Because I did that and I had no temporal sample count, and I did that just because of the performance limitations of my computer. I was running into issues when I was trying to do it like this, and the motion blur just wasn't looking very good. I got rid of it, and I got rid of motion blur, and it does result in the scene feeling a little bit less fast than I necessarily would have liked. Hopefully for the next one, I'll have a better setup and I can work around that problem. But for now, this is how I got around it. And at the very least, having the high spatial sample count of 15 made sure that I wasn't pushing at the scene so far that my computer was going to explode or blue screen or run out of video memory or whatever. But it would still look pretty crisp. So I'm happy with that, especially considering I was trying to render it out at 4K as well. The other thing I did as well was disable the tone curve. I did that specifically so that I could re-enable the color correction within DaVinci Resolve. I'm not going to go through that much today, but just so you're aware. This was the really important stuff. I had to disable so many of these things in order to make it so that it would render. So the other thing as well that was important from optimization here was I could actually disable this and I could remove my viewport scalability back to Epic, but I could not render at cinematic settings. So the goal here was to make it so that you couldn't see as many of the little issues as possible. I don't even know if I'll be able to show them clearly here, but I'll try my best to show you how, like, what was going on and stuff. But if I go close here and then I zoom out, you see how, like, the shadows are, like, really subtly changing? Like, if you pay attention to that there, do you see how, like, there's, like, really little subtle changes that are occurring? If I full screen, it might be a bit clearer. But yeah, you can kind of see it there and stuff like that, right? And it was especially noticeable down in this space as well. There's nothing I could do to avoid that because I just couldn't have cinematic settings on for shadow quality and stuff like that. So the way I had to get around it was basically just turn off every cinematic quality setting that I possibly could. A lot of these, as you can tell, are on by default, and you really don't need them. Like, for example, the flush grass streaming and stuff like that is something that's specifically set up for, like, foliage and for landscape grass. This scene is industrial. So having all those things turned off actually provided me with a ton of extra performance that my limited performance could access in order to be able to render this thing out correctly. So just as a fun little tidbit, and it's something I discuss again in my book a little bit as well, but if you're ever struggling to get renders out on your computer, especially if you're doing one of these challenges, you don't have to do it at cinematic quality if you're working in Unreal. I've gotten into the top 100 and I did it on epic quality, and I did it with every single one of these cinematic rendering settings disabled within the movie render queue as well. And then the rest was as simple as rendering it out. So yeah, I hope that's given you a cool little insight. I know it's a very surface level breakdown of what I've done and stuff, but because I didn't actually have any shots or renders of my process, I'm hoping that at least through talking about it a little bit, it's become a bit clearer. And obviously, with limited time, there's tons of things I forgot to talk about, like, making sure the lights are using the correct volumetric settings, setting up signs, emissive, my use of, like, exposure in the cameras, and then, of course, all of these effects as well. So I'm sure that's stuff I'll be keen to talk about in the future, but for now, I hope that was at least a little bit interesting. And yeah. So yeah, that's just a quick look into how I approach the Rampage Rally Challenge and what it means for me to land into the top 100. It's so awesome. I'm super grateful to Clint and the Punisher community in general on Discord for making spaces like this where artists can like push each other forward. It's just awesome. And it's super exciting to be part of it, and everyone's just like super polite and kind, and it's just really cool. You know, and for me specifically, this video is just the start of a new journey for what I hope this channel can be. I'll be sharing breakdowns like this a little bit more, hopefully some tutorials or like behind the scenes looks at projects where I can. Obviously you know, I'm under NDA for some things, so I can't talk about that, but there are plenty of things I can talk about, which is really exciting. And, you know, even some straight up gaming content I think would be really cool as well, even if it's from the perspective of like breaking down how they might have done a particular moment in a game or something like that. Or just chatting about my stories and stuff. You know, I spoke about the Superman project I made. That went super viral, and then 6 months it went super viral again when a company in Turkey stole it, or like someone in Turkey stole it. And it resulted in a massive thing where this YouTube channel got shut down. They were selling it on Steam. They were saying I was a disgruntled developer. Like, it's a crazy story. So I might even make a video about that because it could be like really interesting to talk about. But yeah, that's ultimately what I want to do. I just want to chat, create a community. And yeah, if there's anyone who is like interested in hearing those things, then awesome. I'll keep doing it. And if not, then that's cool too. It's ultimately just somewhere for me to, I guess, start expressing some of my ideas and thinking about things and so on and so forth. And if people want to be part of that conversation, then awesome. I'm more than welcome it. Yeah, so if that sounds good to you, make sure that you subscribe. That's what I'm told I have to do on YouTube, so make sure you do that. In the next ones, I'm hoping to talk about my book a little bit, so if that's interesting to you as well, be sure to stick around for that. You can also pre-order the book right now. It comes out like early January next year. I'm really, really excited about it, so a few of the upcoming videos are going to be dedicated to that so that I can talk about that and people can get an idea if it's something that they're interested in or not, whether it's gaming, Unreal tips, game design breakdowns, lighting, or just more art challenges like this. Thanks for watching. I've been TJ Atomica, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.